We now have, last but not least, Christopher Elisan, and he is the principal malware scientist at RSA and leads the malware intelligence team. He started his career at Trend Micro and is one of the pioneers of Trend Labs. So welcome, Christopher.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for staying. I know it's late. Hopefully, I can make it worth your while. So, before we begin, I would like to introduce myself. So, first of all, I'm not 17 years old, like Timothy. Currently, I'm the principal malware scientist at RSA, and I'm also the senior manager at MIT. MIT stands for Malware Intelligence Team, not the university. And before RSA, I was with Kampala for 3 years. So I was their resident malware researcher and malware reverser. And before that, I was with F-Secure. So they hired me to build their Asia R&D located in Kuala Lumpur. So it was a great experience for me because it helps me, or it gave me the opportunity to see other cultures aside from Western culture and also some Southeastern culture. So it's also a learning experience for me. And before that, I was in Trend Micro. So Trend Micro is where I started my career. So they hired me straight out of college, and they trained me how to reverse malware. So I remember when they were recruiting during that time, they were just asking for people who know assembly language. And I said, yeah, I know assembly language. So I remember when they were recruiting, they weren't sending out emails, they were sending out telegrams. So I'm not so sure if you guys know what the telegram is, because all of you look so young. Like my kid, I had to explain to my kid what a telegram is. So even when I had this B-Sides t-shirt, the one that I had the cassette tape, I had to explain to him what it was. And then we saw Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we realized, oh, so that's what it's for. It's like an iPad with limited number of songs. So that's how they see it. You can follow me on Twitter, Tops, that's my nickname. Feel free to send me messages, ask me questions. Usually I respond if it's really a very easy question. If it's a really hard question, sometimes it takes me months or even years to respond. But I will respond. Alright, so I'm also the author of Malware Rootkits and Botnets. It was published in 2012. I just finished my new book, Advanced Malware Analysis. It's going to be published next year. And I'm also co-authoring another book with Sean Bodmer. I think he talked here. Some of you know who Sean Bodmer is. And two more authors, and it's due out on 2015. So if you have a budget for a book, please get copies of those books. All of the proceeds go to my two kids' 529 college fund. Georgia Tech is expensive, so I need all the help I can get. So please feel free to get a copy of the books. Alright, so let's go to the talk. So I'll try to speed things up because I only have 40 minutes. This talk is actually designed for 3 hours, so I'm trying to compress it in 40 minutes. So we all know that we are all under attack. But to simplify things, let's concentrate on the two most common attacks. We have the opportunistic attack, and we have targeted attacks. So what's an opportunistic attack? So every time I talk about opportunistic attack, Oprah Winfrey comes to mind. Because like the attackers, they would want to give everybody their malware. Same thing what Oprah Winfrey does on her show. So she gives people stuff, and they're all happy about it. You get the car, you get the car, you get the car, you get the car. But the attackers say, you get the malware, you get the malware, you get the malware, everybody gets the malware. So it's like that. So the more people that are infected, the happier the attackers are. So that's an opportunistic attack. It's like they're throwing all the seeds there, whoever gets infected, those are their victims. So targeted attack. So it's just targeted on the person, probably because of her position in the company, or probably because she has access to systems that the attackers want to get access to. So that's simply what the targeted attack is. But you know what, regardless of the attack, the threat infrastructure and the people behind them are very similar. They use similar technologies, they have similar roles. So whatever the attack is, opportunistic or targeted, the way the attack infrastructure is designed, they're all the same. So what's the attack infrastructure? So an attack infrastructure is a collection of technologies that attackers use to do their attack campaign. So the first step is to have the deployment technology. Now, what's the deployment technology? The deployment technology is a technology that carries the malware to the target. So it can be an email, it can be a drive-by download site, it could be a physical media or whatever. So when I was in the university, we have what we call the floppy disks. So they're big things, and then they started inventing those smaller ones, the 5 and 1/4, and then they started inventing smaller ones, like a 3.5. And it was cool because it was hard. And I thought it says there HD. The first time I got it, I thought it means hard disk. But I realized it doesn't mean that, it really means high density. So before, malware, that was the main deployment technology of malware. But today, it's still being used. Physical media is still being used. If you see people giving out USB sticks in conferences, chances are they're not infected. Or they are. And sometimes people give out CDs, DVDs, and before you know it, you load it to your machine and your machine gets infected. People love free stuff. I love free stuff. Every time I go to Target, I always tell them my favorite word in the English dictionary is free. The second one is discount. So people love to get free stuff. So, like for example, when an attacker wants to attack a certain company located in a certain building, they don't need to come up with sophisticated deployment technology. They could just have one person standing in front of the building giving out USB sticks. They could say, this is a sample of a game that's going to be released in the next couple of weeks. Feel free to try it in your network. Now, if you don't have a network access control, which means that whatever you plug into your host, in your endpoint, it gets read, then chances are you'll get infected. So that's an example of a deployment technology. So from there, usually the deployment technology, it carries with it a malware installer. So there are actually two types of malware installer. We have the dropper and the downloader. So a malware installer, what it does is that it carries the malware and it makes sure that it is installed in the target system in a very effective manner. Now, as I mentioned, there are two types. You have the downloader and the dropper. So a downloader, usually what it does, once the malware installer is running the system, it will check for the presence of, for an updated version of a malware from a malware serving domain, which I will show you later. So that's what the downloader does. A dropper, on the other hand, it has the malware already included in it. So it's just like an installer. So a downloader is, if you're familiar with, I think there are versions of Adobe, I think they still use it now, where when you download Adobe, you just download 230 kilobytes of file, and then you click it, it will connect to update.adobe.com, and then it will download the actual package and install it in your system. That's how a downloader works. A dropper has the executable file or the malware file already in it. So in terms of size, a downloader is smaller compared to a dropper. So that's one difference between a dropper and a downloader. Now there's what we call a hybrid. So a hybrid is because most attackers, they don't expect a machine to be online all the time. So what they do is that if it's not online and they can download anything, they install whatever they have with them, whatever is part of the malware downloader package. So here, we're assuming that it's a downloader, so it checks for updates before installation, it uses a malware serving domain. So a malware serving domain can be an IP, can be a domain, or it's a network resource that hosts updated versions of malware and updated versions of configuration files that the malware uses. Now the importance of malware installer is that after it does its job, it actually deletes itself from the system. That's a very common trait now. If you execute something and then it disappears, chances are it's a malware installer and there's already a malware installed in your system. Now why does it delete itself? It deletes itself because it doesn't want to get captured. Because whoever owns this technology, he could actually sell it again to another group who wants to deploy or who wants to install their malware. They could say, remember that virus A or malware A that infected company B? They didn't know what happened to them. It was installed properly. Nobody was able to detect the installer traversing to the network. That's our malware installer. If you want your malware to be installed in the same way, you can pay us money and we can use our own, again, that malware installer to install your malware. So it's a commodity. And it's easy to delete itself. It's actually very simple. It doesn't take a very complicated coding mechanism. What it does is that it just drops a batch file, and that batch file continuously tries to delete the malware installer. And if it's done doing its thing, it will just exit in memory, and that batch file will delete it from the system, and then the batch file will also delete itself from the system. Now, it needs the aid of a batch file because in Win32 programs or in Windows, Win32 and Win64, you cannot delete yourself while you're running in memory. Because how can you function? So, in essence, a program cannot, it can turn itself off, but since it's already off, it cannot function to delete itself anymore. So it needs the aid of a batch file. So that's that's also a telltale sign. If you find, especially the malware installer, whoever created the malware installer, they're very sloppy. If you see so many batch files in your system that are not supposed to be there, chances are a malware installer was there and installed the malware. So let's say it's able to check for updates in the malware serving domain. So the next thing it would do is that it will install the malware components. Now, when I was starting my career, most of the malware that we see were DOS viruses. And those days, you only need a single file for the malware. Like, a malware is just a single file. But nowadays, if the attack is so sophisticated, the attackers need different components to make the attack successful. Now, all of these components have different capabilities or different functions. Sometimes they're packed in one file, like the old days, but sometimes they're totally separate files, which makes it easier for the attackers to upload each component. So these are the most common files. Common components. So we have the configuration file. So the configuration file usually contains commands or target lists for that malware. The attack component, that's the one that actually executes whatever the malware's main directive is. It could be DDoS, meaning it has DDoS capability. It could be an information stealing malware. It could be a backdoor. It could be a Trojan. It could be whatever. That's the component for it. And we also have the regeneration component, which I also call a Horcrux. So if you guys are familiar with Harry Potter, Horcrux means if you don't kill all of the souls of Voldemort, you would still come back. So it's the same thing. The regeneration component, what it does, it makes sure that all of the components are there. It checks it one by one. If something is missing, it could either rebuild it from a backup in the machine, or it could download it from the malware serving domain. So the main idea of a regeneration component is that it rebuilds the components so that the malware remains persistent in the system. This is the reason why most of us would say, hey, I just removed this malware. So you actually just removed two components, but then you weren't able to detect which one of them is the regeneration component. You turn your system off or you restart it because the tool says you have to restart your system. But then once you restart it, the regeneration component would kick into gear and then it would rebuild the malware components again. And you also have the rootkit component. So if the malware wants to hide its presence in the system, you can have a rootkit component. And of course, the most important thing, the bot agent. So the bot agent is the one that's responsible for communicating to the attackers. It actually registers the infection. It could send out information like MAC addresses, username, country, OS versions, whatever. So it's the one responsible for communicating with the attackers. So the malware components from time to time, it checks for updates in the malware serving domain. If there are no updates, it's good. Like what Solomon's was demonstrating, the malware would sleep, and then it would do nothing. And one of the commands that it could be doing is that you have an update for me. And so if there's an update, it downloads those components. This is why like some enterprise or some organizations, when they capture malware in their system and then they send it to their security vendors, the security vendors would send out the solution for it. But chances are, whatever that component that was extracted, it's already gone in the system because an updated version of it is already in your system. So even deploying that solution would not solve anything. In my previous talk, which is not covered here, I demonstrated how easy it is to create malware. You can create malware in seconds, an updated version of a malware. You can create them in seconds. Compared to a security researcher creating a solution for malware that would probably take him, the fastest would be 2 hours. So 2 seconds versus 2 hours, we know is winning in that front. So when it comes to communicating with the command and control, so we all know what the CNC is. It's the one that actually sends commands to the malware components that would actually influence how it operates in the system. Now this is the thing here. When it comes to malware research, it's easy to say this malware connects to this domain, this malware connects to this IP, this malware connects to whatever network resource. But the challenge there really is, what is the purpose of connecting to those malware resources? So if you're reading a report, or if you're talking to somebody who's telling you the same thing, this malware connects to that network resource, to that domain or IP, the next question should be, okay, why is it connecting to that domain or to that IP? Is it using it as a malware serving domain? Is it using it as a CNC? And all that. Because a CNC, it doesn't need to be a domain or an IP. Like in my previous talk, I've demonstrated how you can use Twitter to become a CNC for your malware. You can even use Facebook. You can even use a web page that you create, because you can configure your malware to actually read from different network resources. As long as a technology has the capability to post information, it can be used as a CNC. So one example, let's say a malware is designed, let's say this one, the attack component is spam. It's basically used for spamming. And the attacker decided, let's use apple.com as our CNC. So it means that if something changes in apple.com, the malware would interpret it as a command, and then it would do what it needs to do. So let's say that command is a series of strings. Now the series of strings would say iPad released. So if it sees something in apple.com that says iPad released, that malware would wake up and say, oh, iPad released. And then it would trigger the spam component, and then the spam component would start sending out spam saying, hey, you just won an iPad, the newly released iPad. Please click this link to get your new iPad. So it's something like that. So people would say this malware it's not a botnet, it doesn't communicate with anything, but actually it does. It's just using another network resource as a CNC in a very creative fashion. Because how can you take down Apple.com? If you're reversing the malware and you see in the code, hey, this is actually using Apple.com as its CNC. Of course, you cannot report Apple.com and say Apple.com is a CNC, right? But in reality, that's how the malware is using it. Another network resource that malware often use are drop zones. This is where they drop information that they're stealing, especially if the attack component is an information stealing malware. So there are 3 kinds. There are more, but these are the common ones. You have the hard drive. They can use email, or they can use the main drop zone. So during the days of spyware, all of the information that are stolen is being dropped into the hard drive. Anyway, the attacker has access to the hard drive or to the local system, that's why it's easy for them to retrieve that information. But of course, if you're going to infect thousands and thousands of people, you don't have access to those thousands of machines, unless of course you can hack into all of those machines quite easily. But of course, that's easy if you have a back door, because if you have a back door, you can just come in, read their hard drive, and then get that information. So to make it easier for them, they introduced the use of email. So all of the information are now being sent through email. Now, how are stolen information being sent through email? Some of them are sent via files, some of them are sent via text. The text are encrypted text wherein the attacker will just copy paste whatever's written in that email, run it in his decryption tool, and then it will display the real message. It could be a message, or it could be a file. It could, like when you open a file, you open a doc file, you open an executable file. If you have hex edit or any hex editor, you will see the ASCII characters that make up the file. Usually when it comes to emails, that's how malware transmits the stolen information. On the domain drop zone, it's easier for them because they have a control panel, so they could see all the information that's being stolen and that they are receiving. And it's easy for them to manage all of that because they could have a UI for that. So this is what a typical attack infrastructure looks like. Some attack will have no CNC, some of them will have no malware serving domain, some of them won't even have drop zones, especially if it's more of a hit and run attack. When I say hit and run, if it's an information stealing hit and run where they only need a couple of minutes, they don't need any CNC for that, they don't need any malware serving domain for that. They only need the domain drop zone. If it's a Trojan type hit and run attack, they don't need any of these network resources because once it's in, you can just delete all the files, format the system, or whatever. So it depends on the attack type whether all of these domains or all of those network resources will be used. But these are the most common attack infrastructure that you will be faced with, especially if you're responsible for protecting the networks in your company. So the human element. Of course, those technologies don't create themselves. Somebody creates them. So I always see the human elements, I divide them into 3 groups. You have the sponsors, then you have the technical owners, and then what's the other one? And then you have the prime boss. So first, you have the sponsor. The sponsor is the one that needs something done. They're the ones who usually finance the attack. So it could be a government, commercial organization, non-commercial activist groups, individual, even a terrorist organization. They are the people that want something done. So if they want something done, usually they communicate with a cybercrime boss, but we'll go to that later. So to make sure that the attack infrastructure are working, or the people that handle all of those attack infrastructure, they're called the technical owners. And one of the groups in the technical owner is a malware writer. For me, these are the smartest guys I've ever dealt with. Because when I was starting my career, I would always think, oh, that's not possible. It cannot be done. and then you handle the malware, you reverse it, and then you see, oh yeah, it's really possible, and now I know how to do it. So I would say they're the smartest people because of their creativity. Unfortunately, they're using it for something not so good. So and I always tell this in my talks, and I always joke about this with our CEO before. Once I retire, the first part of my speech would be, I would like to thank the malware writers for giving me job security. Because without them, my life would be calm. Not so exciting. So most of the things I learned from the malware writers, reversing their malware. Now, of course, standing here, I keep on saying reversing malware, reverse this, reverse that. But in reality, it's easier said than done. Like in the DOS days, even the early Windows 95 malware, I could reverse them in minutes, in hours. But now the malware is so sophisticated, and there's so many protective mechanisms that you have to actually remove before you get into the malware code itself. It takes weeks, even months, to reverse one malware sample. This is the reason why there's a malware attack, and then there's going to be a report published about it, usually like 3 weeks after or a month after, because that's the amount of time that it took the researchers from that company, whoever wrote that report, to actually reverse and find out everything they need to know about that malware. I remember before Trend Micro, you get a malware, they publish a report about it before you go, before end of business day. That's how easy it is. But now, because of the sophistication of malware, it's not the same thing anymore. So another technical owner, they're the deployment providers. This is the one that I was saying about the deployment technology. They could be owners of botnets that have spam capability, or they could be owners of a drive-by download sites. They probably have foot soldiers that would distribute USB sticks as a deployment technology, and sometimes they offer 24/7 support. If you go to different hacker forums, even the non-underground ones, they would sell their wares there. Even in Pastebin, if you go to Pastebin, there are lots of like small-time technology providers who would offer their service there. So it's not easy to find. It's not hard to find the technology owners. And sometimes it's good to engage them. But what I would suggest is that if you have a team in your company that does this work, that engage the bad guys, it's always good to inform your local law enforcement, because you never know, probably they're monitoring the communication. It's good to have them involved so that if something happens, you're always in the field. And then you have the botnet master. So the botnet master is the one that maintains and controls the botnet. And nearest to him, So one that's near the botnet master is actually the botnet operator. So we'll discuss the resilience provider later. So the botnet master, he owns the whole botnet. He can rent it out. Now the botnet operator is the one that's renting the botnet. So to summarize it, not all botnet operators are botnet masters, but all botnet masters can be botnet operators. Like let's say I have a friend here, an imaginary friend. He's a botnet master, and I need to DDoS somebody. So I would tell him, can you give me a slice of your botnet? And then he would ask me, okay, which country do you want them to come from? Do you want them to come from US or from South Korea? It would cost you a lot more because the internet infrastructure in those countries are fast. But if you don't have money, you could probably say, okay, I could give you a botnet from machines that are infected in Kazakhstan, probably, or other countries that have very slow internet connection. Because the faster the internet connection the infected machines are, the more expensive it is for the botnet operator. So the botnet master And the funny thing here is that sometimes they also have EULAs. They have all of these end user license agreements that they would say, however they use or whatever purpose they use my system, it's not my responsibility, it's their responsibility, or something like that. So they're still trying to cover their behind. But of course, if something happens, everybody gets arrested, they're still culpable. Now, the resilience provider, usually they provide an anti-takedown network. Most of them are bulletproof domain hosting. So what's the bulletproof domain hosting? Usually this is a hosting company that doesn't really care how you use their servers, as long as they get paid. If you use them for bad, if you use them for good, they really don't care as long as you pay them. And these are located, and the servers are located in countries that really don't have any laws against what they're doing. So this is what the bulletproof hosting is. So if you hear this while you're conversing with other people in our industry, they keep on throwing terms around. So that's a good term to remember. And again, they also offer 24/7 support. And sometimes they also offer fast flux DNS services. So if you're familiar with Configure, so it has a DGA, domain generated algorithm. So instead of communicating to one single domain, which is very easy to blacklist, it actually generates hundreds. I think the C variant creates 50,000 unique domains every day. So that's what you call domain fluxing. And sometimes it can be provided because Configure is more of the DGA itself is located in the malware, or it's encoded in the malware. So if you're able to reverse it, you'll find out how it works. You can actually create a tool out of it, and then you can generate those domains in the future, thus defeating whatever purpose that DGA was meant for. Now, most providers, they would say, I could generate the domains for you every day. It will not be encoded in the malware, but I could generate them for you every day, and then we could update the configuration file in one of those components. And even if they capture the malware, they won't be able to get a hold of the algorithm that generates those domains. So that's one example of how they implement the fast flux DNS service. All right, the crime boss. So the crime boss, he runs the show. He's actually the middleman. Usually he's the one who has contacts with the technical owners. So it depends on how sophisticated the attack team is. Most of the technical owners, they work exclusively with the crime boss, and nobody gets to know who the sponsor is. Like most sponsors, they want their identities to be kept secret. So actually, when we work with law enforcement, we're always after the crime boss, because usually he's the key to everything. He knows who the sponsor is, and he knows who the technical owners of the attack infrastructure are. So if you want more information, usually the best way to target the crime boss. But again, it's easier said than done, because we're dealing with the digital digital warfare. Everything can be fake. Like when you analyze malware, like for me, I don't say for certain that a certain malware originates from a certain country or a certain continent. We hear that all the time these days. They would say, this came from this country, this came from this country. Everything can be fake. So the best, like for me, the way I word it is always evidence shows, based on my analysis, that it points to this country. Evidence shows that it points to this country. Because everything can be fake here, especially malware. And you have money mules. They usually unsuspecting public and they work from home. So most of the money mule sites, I forgot to put an example here. When you look at it, some of them really look better than Monster.com or HotJobs.com. So that's how sophisticated they are now. Before, you can just see the ads in Pastebin, or you get them through email, or sometimes they would send you, we got your resume on file, we just need for you to complete this information, and then we'll give you a work from home job. Now usually that has two purposes. One, you just gave them your information, and another one, if they're really after money mules, you're a potential money mule for them. One thing that's I see here in the US that I haven't seen in other countries that I've been in, is that if you know the person's birthday, the last 4 digits of his or her social security number, and mother's middle name, you can access almost everything about that person financially. And sometimes we give away all of those information for free. So we have Facebook, we have different social media. Sometimes we create invitations and then we post those information there, especially if it's a wedding invitation. They would put the full name of the parents, the father and the mother. Let's say John Apple Smith, or the mother would be let's say Stella Apple Smith. So you know already that the mother's middle name is there. And sometimes, if it's of a Hispanic descent, they would include the maiden name of the mother in the invitation. So that's how you easily get those kinds of information. Like attackers who attack companies, some of them they really don't need that sophisticated hacking attack because all of the information they need are already available in public. I need to hurry up here. Alright, so those are the people that are behind the attack infrastructure. So we discussed the attack infrastructure and we also discussed the people behind it. So let's go to mitigation. So first, understand the threat. So that was the purpose of the first part of this presentation. I've given you an overview of how the attack infrastructure works and what are the people behind it. And of course, understand your system. If you know your system, you know how to defend it. Right? So threat modeling and all those fun stuff, you really need to conduct those in the company or in the network you are protecting, or you're in charge of protecting. And then choose the right solutions. Alright, so choosing the right solutions. So right now there's so many people selling stuff. Our company sells stuff. Everybody sells stuff. That's how people make money. So it's normal. But the key there is that you have to choose the right solution for you. If you have an understanding of how the attack infrastructure works, if somebody comes to you, our product can do this, you can ask that person, okay, how does it fit into the attack infrastructure? Does it stop communication to network resources? Does it stop the restoration of malware in my system? Is it an endpoint solution? Does it have the capability to detect deployment technologies? Does it have the capability to detect whether a certain malware is traversing through the network? So if basically what I'm saying here is that if somebody is presenting you with a solution, you have to know where does it fit in the attack infrastructure. So it's the same thing. If you're going to ask for a budget to buy a security solution, before it was hard, now it's not that hard because there's so many things happening left and right, companies being attacked. But let's say it's hard. It's good to have that understanding so that when you talk to whoever is in charge of the budget, you can say, we need this solution because this solution takes care of this part of the attack infrastructure and this is how it works. So that's one thing. And also, when it comes to product demonstrations, companies would always demonstrate product using their own samples or using their own data sets. It's always good to have your own data sets or samples with you, because your own samples usually represent your real scenario, especially if those samples are collected from the organization that you are in charge of protecting. So that's one mitigation is choose the right solutions. Another one is educate your people. So it's very common, you hear this all the time, educate your people. But one thing you can do is not only educate the people in your company, but also their immediate family. This is especially true if you have an executive security team. So an executive security team is that they're in charge of protecting the high-ranking officials in your company. So why are they protected? Because most of those people have access to systems that attackers want to gain access to. This is why whale phishing was invented. They target the big wigs in the company. So one example is that let's say Paula. So she's a CEO, right? So let's say she has a daughter, and her daughter is in Poland, or let's say New York, because they have an office in New York. So let's say the daughter posted in her social security or in social network site or Twitter, "Party at my house tonight, mom's away on business, I don't care where it is," or something like that. Now attackers could actually be monitoring, in fact, especially those highly funded ones, they could be monitoring immediate family members. Now if I'm an attacker, I'd say, oh, the mom, the CEO we're trying to target is actually in a conference, and they find out it's Takedowncon. So probably because the daughter said there she's in Huntsville, Google search for security conference in Huntsville would reveal Takedowncon, especially if the dates are there. So what attackers can do, let's assume Paula is not a tech-savvy person that she is. What the attackers can do is that they could send her an email saying, "Thank you for attending the conference, we really appreciate your presence. Please download this card as a sign of our thank you, or please click this link as to answer a survey," and all that. Now, if Paula is non-technical, she could probably be convinced that it's legit. But most companies, they say, hey, if there's something in the email, if it's a link, don't click it. So attackers, what they would do is that, we know that USPS is bleeding money, our postal service. But attackers use the postal service, especially for this kind of purpose. Now, people tend to believe what's written on paper rather than on an email. So what the attackers would do is that they would send them a package, a very nice envelope with a certificate that says certificate of attendance or certificate of appreciation or whatever. Then a letter saying with a Takedowncon letterhead, whatever. They could probably be using the bonus name or something and say, "Thank you again for attending the conference. Please type this link on your browser for the survey." Or they could probably put their CD or a USB stick or whatever. And that letter now becomes the deployment technology of malware. And they were able to find out that information because of a social network posting of the daughter of the CEO they're trying to target. This is why, if you have an executive security team in your company, it's important. Like some people would actually the security team would sit down with the immediate family members of those key people, just to brief them on all of this security-related stuff. So that's one example of educating your people. So you're widening your circle of influence when it comes to security, and your circle of concern is shrinking. It's like what Stephen Covey said in his Principles of Leadership book, or is it 7 Habits? You have to increase your... So same principle in security. The less concern you have, and the more things that you can control, the better. But of course, control is just a myth, especially in the malware world. So, our part as researchers. So we fight the threats in 2 different fronts. First, the technical. So malware, hacking, attacking, everything, it's a technical problem. So it's a technical problem for you to solve. So, like if you want a seamless network, Cisco was able to solve it with their segmentation. So that's a technical solution to a technical problem. So let's say malware utilizes a certain sector in your hard disk or a certain Windows feature. That's a technical problem that has to be solved. So to solve that, we need research, we need scientific approach, and we need to do knowledge sharing. So conferences, writing papers, writing blogs, those are good examples of knowledge sharing. Because one thing that the attackers have an advantage, for them it's easy to share information, but for us, it's hard. Like for me, when I was building the sample sharing between different AV vendors, it was very easy. But then when we asked approval from the higher ups, that's when it became difficult. Because sales and marketing say, no, we cannot do that. We cannot share samples with them, we cannot share this information with them, we cannot do that, we cannot do this, we cannot do that. So it becomes difficult. Even now, if you're familiar with the organization, Caro, in charge of name malware, even until now, nobody is able to come up with how to properly name malware. So it's hopefully that will change before I retire. So it'll be easier for my kids. So another aspect of how you face the threat or how you attack the threat is through legal means. So, like for us, our team, we work with law enforcement agencies, law enforcement officers, whatever evidence we find in malware or in any attack, we share them with the local authorities. We share them with people who we think will be able to help take down a certain botnet, take down a certain group or attacker group. And again, it's easier said than done because it's hard to occupy a certain technology to a certain group of people unless you have prior knowledge of their tendencies and habits. So once you have prior knowledge of their tendencies and habits, you could extrapolate and say, hey, this one looks more like their modus operandi. So we can tie it to them. But again, as I said, this is a very difficult thing to do because everything can be faked. So probably one attacker group is trying to frame another attacker group and they're making that malware very easy to capture. So that's what I have. And again, thank you for listening. So usually it starts like that and it ends like this. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you all for coming to Takedowncon Huntsville 2014. We love coming to Huntsville and we plan to come back again next year. So please look out for our 2015 dates for the training and conference for next year. Also, I would like to remind you to fill out your surveys. You will receive a survey in your email. If you haven't already.
It might be from us.
Thanks, Christopher. But we do value your opinions, so we hope that you can fill those out for us. We had Christopher check them out, and he says they're okay. Also, I wanted to tell you that all the presentations will be available via Adrian.
Thanks so much.
He has been filming it for us. As a service to you all. He will have them available in about a week. I'm going to give him a week.
Sure.
Yeah. Is that
Maybe
okay?
less than that, but yeah.
Okay, on irongeek.com. We will also send you an email and let you know. We'll send you that link. We will also send you a link to where all the presentations and make those available to you as well. All the PDFs and PowerPoint presentations that were here today. And thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Big hand for Devon for putting it all work on the guys. Thanks, guys. See you guys soon.